Hello, my name is Don Hall. I've had the good fortune to be part of the Transition Towns movement for the past 16 years and currently serve as training coordinator for Transition Network. I'm also the author of the Regeneration Handbook, Transform Yourself to Transform the World. This is one in a series of 4 short videos I'm creating for the Practicing Transition campaign based on practices described in my book. Although burnout is well known as a potential pitfall among activists, many of us keep falling into it again and again. Depending on how you count it, I've burned out at least 4 times over the past 2 decades. However, each time I've learned more about why burnout occurs. This has enabled me to bounce back more quickly and maybe even prevent burnout entirely by recognizing its early warning signs. Conventionally, burnout is understood simply as the result of working too hard for too long. It's exacerbated by a lack of strong work-life boundaries, and those engaged in work that has an especially high degree of mental and/or emotional labor tend to be more susceptible to it. Indeed, as tough as organic farming can be on the body, I've always found my work with the transition movement to be more exhausting. I believe this is because it's so intellectually demanding and emotionally charged. Simply trying to remain conscious in these times isn't easy. However, in my experience, burnout can also be caused by subtler forces that aren't usually talked about, such as a misalignment with one's purpose and values, or persistent feelings of disempowerment or hopelessness. The remedies conventionally prescribed for burnout typically come under the banner of the ubiquitous self-care. While things like reducing our commitments or taking time off, spending more time in nature and with friends and family, and eating healthy, exercising, and getting plenty of sleep undoubtedly help, there are other responses we should consider as well. If we feel misaligned in our current role, lack agency, or doubt that our efforts are truly making a difference, we should take that as a sign to speak up and advocate for ourselves. Although the change needed might be only a small adjustment, it could also involve transitioning into a different role or a different organization or line of work entirely. While major life changes such as these can be difficult and scary, if we don't speak up or make a change, we risk suppressing and internalizing our discontent. And although we may be able to push through these feelings for a while, we will eventually have to reckon with reality. At the point when we can no longer tolerate our situation, we may already feel so drained and defeated that we may be inclined to give up altogether. That's the worst possible outcome, and one we're specifically trying to avoid. While working to make the world a better place is never going to be easy, we can learn how to modulate our stress so it doesn't become debilitating. One framework I found to be useful for navigating this territory is called the learning zone model. It's both incredibly simple and surprisingly profound. As you can see, it consists of 3 concentric circles. The smallest circle in the center is our comfort zone. The largest circle furthest away is our danger zone. And in between, we have a challenge zone. The main idea is to spend as much time in our challenge zone as possible without tipping ourselves over into danger. As we repeatedly stretch ourselves in this way, our comfort zone naturally expands while our danger zone contracts. Sometimes these zones are color-coded, green for comfort, yellow for challenge, and red for danger, to make them even easier to remember. When we're doing stressful work, we might check in with ourselves periodically and ask whether we're currently in the green, yellow, or red. If we feel we've been running in the red for too long, we'd be wise to ease off the accelerator. And if we've noticed we've been stalling out at a green light, we can take that as a sign to move forward. However, because the contents and dimensions of each of these zones vary from person to person and moment to moment, the only way we can really know where we're currently at is by cultivating direct awareness of our state of being. That's one reason I believe it's essential to intentionally cultivate mindfulness and awareness. Whether we find ourselves drawn to meditation, yoga, prayer, ceremony, gardening, bird watching, journaling, or art, the most important thing is that we have at least one regular practice that helps us develop these qualities. Without them, we may not recognize when we're approaching burnout, understand why it's happening, or know the right antidotes to apply. Mindfulness and awareness are also required to make use of a tool I've developed for preventing burnout and maintaining balance called the mandala of life. In Tibetan Buddhism and elsewhere, a mandala represents a complete and sacred world with its essence firmly planted in the center, radiating out to encompass a variety of manifestations. In the center of the mandala of life, we need to plant our physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being, without which nothing else can really happen. However, we also need to be continually developing our mind or intellect through learning and contemplation, cultivating a supportive home and community life, nourishing our hearts with the healing waters of love, joy, and self-expression, and engaging in service to our wider world. I believe all 5 of these elements need to be continually attended to if we want to live lives that are healthy, happy, whole, and sustainable over the long run. I find that if I neglect any of these elements for too long, I become wobbly, like a chair that's missing a leg or a seat. Here's one way to put the mandala of life into practice. Start by drawing its 5 circles on a piece of paper. Then note down in the appropriate circle what you've been doing recently to nurture yourself in each of these 5 areas. Once you've done that, reflect on how well they're currently balanced, where you might need to cut back, and where you might need to pay more attention. Finally, add and remove actions as needed to balance the whole. Eventually, you might be able to do this same exercise simply by visualizing the mandala of life and running through the rest of these steps in your mind. However, I recommend starting out by writing everything down. It's generally easier to stay focused and remember what you plan to do this way. That's all for this video. Please visit practice.transitionmovement.org for more great transition practices. Thanks for listening, and good luck.